Hello everyone, I'm Vivek from India and I'm representing Air Dialogue for today's discussion on women in positions of leadership. Before getting into detail, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe our YouTube channel and follow us on social media for more events such as these. Yeah, sorry. ADOG is established in Dublin 2010 and is a sister organization of Dialogue Society with the aim of advancing social cohesion by connecting communities, empowering people to engage in contributing to the development of ideas and dialogue and community building. It does this by bringing people together through discussion forums, courses, capacity building publications, and outreach. It operates nationwide with regional branches across the island. We all, according to a survey, a recent survey in Ireland, there could be several obstacles to female leadership, which are women are held to higher standards than men, and people think many businesses aren't ready to hire women for top executive positions, and family responsibilities don't leave time for running a major corporation. Women don't have access to same kinds of connection as men, so therefore you have. I hope am I audible? I hope I'm. Yes. Ha. So without further ado, we're going to discuss about lots of things. We're going to discuss about how women can be more empowered in this present scenario. So without further ado, I'm laying the floor to the speakers. Now each speaker would speak for 10 minutes and then we'll be open for questions from the audience. For the first speaker, I would like to welcome Jeevantika Lingalwar, who is the founder and president of International Women in Tech Island Group, technical manager, co-founder, Quantum Computing Island, founder of India Ireland Connect, and also a member of IEEE in Ireland. She joined PrimeLine in July 2019 to lead business and digital transformation, including the introduction of new technology. She also held responsible for technology partners and client relationships for PrimeLine, leader in PrimeLine's cloud migration journey. She worked closely with Microsoft EMEA team, Dublin, to design and implement new technology. She is skilled in delivering new business strategies based on digital transformation, and she's also responsible for developing Power Apps roadmap in line with Power BI strategy. And she has 2 years experience as a software developer, and she has done her bachelor's from India and she has done her master's degree in National College of Ireland. So now I welcome on board Jeevantika. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Vivek. I hope I'm audible to everybody. So, hello again to all, and thanks, guys, for having me. And it's a pleasure sitting here and talking to you all. That was a really good introduction, Vivek, that you give. So I think I do not need to speak more about myself. I don't want to brag it, but really, thanks. That was really wonderful. Just a small thing to say that in terms of my background, that I came to Ireland to do my master's after finishing my engineering in India. I worked there for 2 years and I came to Ireland to do my master's in cloud computing. It turned out to be pretty well. And after that, I got hired in one of the largest logistics company in Ireland called as Primeline. And I was working as a chief technology officer. Currently, I'm in Microsoft working as a partner technology strategist. And also, I am a founder of International Women in Tech Ireland with 2,300 people around. The main reason I would say starting International Women in Tech was personal experience that I had to go through being a international student in Ireland, being a female student in Ireland, being a young leader in Ireland. And I being international foreign student in a college where I faced a lot of racism, criticism around, working women, around women cannot really excel into technologies, women cannot really be into leadership panel. So I kind of faced those problems personally and experienced a lot of things. So usually students who are coming to Ireland to studies, they take a huge amount of loan from India, an education loan, and then they do part-time jobs in Ireland or in other countries to fill up that loan because that's how it works. That's the culture, I think so. And I was one of them, so I used to do my part-time job as well. There even I faced a lot of problems because they did not wanted to hire a female to do a till job. So I was working in an Indian store as I was on the till, collecting cash whoever is coming to buy some stuffs. And I also worked in security, standing for 20 hours as an event stewardess and then earning my money to pay my loans off. So I thought that I had nowhere to share my problems. There is no platform where I could talk about my stuffs. There are nobody I could share with what female or what young students, what young female students are facing right now. So I just thought maybe I should create one platform where everybody could gather and talk about their problem, social economic problem, social status problem, in terms of technology, people struggling to get a job, people struggling to work, people struggling to study. So I started this group with 10 people, and currently I have 2,300 members in the group. Actually, more than 2,300 members in the group. So first I named it International Women in Tech Ireland, and a lot of people who wanted to join the group. They asked me like, how can we join, because it's International Women in Tech Ireland, and since we are not based in Ireland we cannot join. So I renamed the name to just International Women in Tech, because that made sense, since it's an International Women in Tech, and I am putting Ireland in the end, which would have just narrowed it down to Ireland people. So I kept it in International Women in Tech, and then from all around the globe, I have people in there. Everybody is an entrepreneur, everybody is a leader, everybody is a student, everybody is a graduate. So in the group, we host events every month based on the requirement of our audience. So we have been hosting events on mindfulness coaching. We have been introducing events and webinars on technology, the newest technology. I am also a speaker about quantum computing, so I brought the technology education as well into the group. And young females, young students who are inspired to get into technology or into leadership skills, even they are being encouraged and encountered in the group. I think, according to survey that Vivek and Afra shared, and what I have seen in the society, that what are the barriers that are pulling women to stay behind, or what are the barriers that they are not getting that leverage or importance to be in the society. One of the reason that I felt is cognitive bias. And by cognitive bias, I mean that every independent is having their own opinion about a female. So if, for example, if my colleague who is a male gender, and I wouldn't say it about me because I am single, so I cannot give that comment, but a working mom who's having her 1 year old baby with her, and then a society is telling her, okay, they are having their own opinion, so how can she get promoted, how can she be on the CEO position? She has a baby, so she cannot come because she has to take care of the baby and she has a full-time job. So she is not supposed to sit on the leadership chair. But at the same time, a man is also responsible to take care of the child. A woman is not just responsible to take care of a child alone. Equal status is given to a man, and if the leadership skills is given to a man, it should equally be given to a woman, because both of them play a very important role to grow their family, to take care of the children, and both of them have equal status to sit on that CEO chair. So I feel there's a lot of lack of education and more of an cognitive bias perspective in the society and in the people and also in the employers. So since a lot of male are into technical skills and a lot of female are not really into the technology area, they feel that women are not capable. But I think because of this less education, and there is a need for every woman to grow confidence in them, so as to not to feel that we are not supposed to be on that panel, we are not supposed to be in the society where a lot of men are encouraged. And in my group I have kept it 50-50 equality. I did not want it to be female bias, I did not want it to be promoting the fake feminism, because I am against it. I just wanted an equal opportunity to be created for both of the genders. And so in my group you'll find a lot of men as well, and we encounter all this problem. So whenever I host any event, I make sure there are equal amount of women who are joining the group, and at least a male speaker is there who is encountering them. And if there is a female speaker who is, giving some sort of advice, I would like to have some male who are promoting the same event at the same time. And this is the second point that I feel is a barrier in today's women in leadership place, which where women are not empowering women. So we need people to take assertive approach where we, be as a women, are empowering other women to do more. And how are we trying to do that is by helping other women if they are in need. Just like I started this group, everybody can do the same thing. It's not really necessary that you have to start your own group and start bringing up people, but in your own society around you, you can help your women to grow more, to do more. And it's not just a responsibility of a woman to do that, it's the responsibility of your own companion as well. So they need to leverage and give this opportunity to a women to grow and excel in their career. And they need to encourage them to dive into technology more and take a stand, because I think that is what lacking in the society, and that is the reason a women is not being given that credit. Women is not being given that recognition, and they are not being selected for any uh, as the survey said that salary increment, they are not paid equally as CEO of another company and the CEO of different companies. So if a woman is the CEO of some different company and a male is there, their salary would matter really well. It will be different because she is a female CEO. She would be given very less amount of her work wage. So how can we bring that to equal opportunity area? And I think we just need to educate ourselves first rather than educating others. How do we treat the other how do we treat other females? How do we empower other females? By empowering ourselves, by encouraging ourselves to get into it. And there is a process called as name and shame. If into an employer, if an employer is doing such sort of misery, if there is something happening in the company where there is no proper gender imbalance, because I see right now people approaching me that they want to bring gender imbalance in their community, and they want to host events on the same in my group so that more women are encouraged to take participate, more women are encouraged to get into company and start building their career in technology. So name and shame is something that could be brought along, and people are made aware of these things, and that's when they start encouraging more women into it. And I think it's not really a big deal at this point, because it's all up to ourselves, it's all up to our decision, it's all up to our ways of thinking, and we just need to motivate within that. We have to bring our women out, we have to help our women who are in need, and we have to get those women working, and we have to get those women accelerating in whatever they are doing. So I just want to say this to all the women out there, that you are beautiful and you are wonderful and you are much way talented than you think you are. So just grow that confidence in you and just stand with confidence, and then we'll see how it goes. So I think I've taken my 10-15 minutes. I don't know if I've crossed it, but no, thank you so much. That's all I would say.
Thank you very much, Jeevantika. That's definitely wonderful. Looking at your story, like how you have completed your bachelor's, and then I've gained experience, and then I've gained a admission here in masters, and Ireland. It's all new for you, and coming here and working as a security has definitely inspired me, because not many boys would definitely want to do that kind of a job right now, because they are like afraid and stuff. But then you took all the courage to work and to support yourself financially and emotionally and physically also. And
That's why I have the background, Vivek. See the background.
that's inspiring actually. And I definitely respect the way you get technology, and because it's all about teaching each other, growing and building together. So it's all about that, and definitely agree to the point that you need to have an equal status in the families to raise and grow. And by this, I guess I remember Whitney Wolf. She recently became a self-made millionaire. He was also the founder, ex-co-founder of Tinder, and now the founder
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Bumble. I read a story that she got sexually assaulted in the past company, but then now she's a millionaire and an inspiration to many women out there. So thank you very much, Jeevantika, for sharing your experience. That was wonderful having you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now I have a second speaker, Gillian, Harford, who is a highly qualified senior HR and change expert with more than 35 years experience leading people transformation and business change within the financial services industry. Responsible for the design and delivery of career, performance, and reward systems, together with the development of progressive HR policies. She has a specific interest in diversity and inclusion and have designed and implemented diversity strategies. She is flexible and agile working policies and sponsor the development of communication and engagement programs for more than 10,000 employees, including unconscious bias training, development of employee resource groups, talent pipeline options, agile leadership, and workplace improvement. She's a very strong advocate for advancing the role of women at senior leadership and board levels, and an active member of the 30% Club Ireland, chair and non-executive director on the board of Beaumont Hospital, Dublin, non-executive director on the board of RCSI Hospital Group, a fellow member of CIPD, and a fellow of the Institute of Bankers of Ireland. Thank you very much, Gillian. Please, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Vivek. The introduction always sounds very daunting, so I have to catch my breath before I start to speak. It's really interesting listening to Jeevantika's story, because so much of it is different, but there are a lot of similarities and a lot of things I recognize. So if I talk about introducing myself maybe in a slightly different way, so Google very kindly tells me that I live in a world of just over 7.5 billion people. And of those 7.5 billion people, just over 50% are female. I live in Ireland, a country that has one of the highest scores from the World Economic Forum on education, because much as we may give out about it, we have fantastic and free education for primary school and secondary school, and 54% of our primary graduates are female. I have spent all my life in financial services, where 56% of the population are female. And I have worked all my life, other than 2 very short maternity leaves, because when I had my children, maternity leave was very short. So I'm part of the 46% of the workforce that is female. I am white, I am Irish, so you would think I would have spent my entire life in a majority. But when I think about myself as a woman in leadership and a woman in the workplace, I worked my way up to a senior executive role at the most senior level in my organization, where less than 20% were female. I chair a board, and in Ireland, less than 9% of board chairs are female, even though women make up 85% of the consumer decisions in Ireland. I was a working mum in a society where the perception was to be a senior executive, you had to be single, or if you were married, you had no children. And I was part of a dual career couple, again, where there was a perception that if you were in a dual couple as a female senior executive, your husband didn't work, or he was a house husband. And between myself and my husband, we both managed to have successful careers and raise 2 children to adulthood without totally screwing up their life, even though I had 20 or 30 years of guilt that went with it. And I got into financial services by accident. So nothing about my life was a plan. I didn't turn around and say, I want to be a senior female leader in financial services. I went in for 10 months and stayed for 39 years. I went into one company and stayed in the same company for 39 years, which, trust me, is really hard. It's easier to leave a company when times are hard. It's much more of a challenge to stay and grow, particularly in something like financial services that had incredible years, but also had some terrible years where I would get in a taxi and not tell the taxi driver where I worked, because that was just the environment that I lived in. I worked my way from role to role, always driven by something that I was interested in. And 3 times along the way, I paused to take on further education, but I did it as part of work, because at the time it was quite hard as a woman to step out of the workforce and then try and step back in again. And lots of times I was supported by great mentors and great sponsors, most of whom were male. Because if I look at some of the challenges that I faced along the way, the biggest challenge that I faced when I joined financial services in 1979 is that there were no senior women to be role models. Because up until a year or 2 before that, women had to leave work in the bank when they got married. And even for a few years after that, if you did get married, you got paid to leave. So I had no role models. So I had to become one, and we had to create our own role models. As a HR person, it embarrasses me now to turn around and say that in the 80s and the 90s, we put together a package of what a leader should look like. And we put all our managers through training to make sure that they all looked the same and behaved the same. And we prioritized more masculine skills and deprioritized more feminine skills, both for men and for women. And the idea of inclusion and being myself is not something that we prioritized because we thought the formula would fit. And that was a real challenge. And there was a status quo that we accepted. And I'm embarrassed now to say that I accepted it. So when I applied for my first managerial role, I was told I was unsuccessful because I knew more than the boss. And he felt it would be awkward to have somebody reporting to him who knew more than he did. And I accepted it, and I went home and said, fine. And the second time I applied to be a manager, I was told I was the best candidate, but they really wanted a man on the team, so it just wasn't my turn. And again, I accepted it. And then I came back a third time. I don't know why I came back a third time, but I did. And third time around, I got the job. And actually, it was a better job than the other 2, and it put me in a much better position. But for me, it was still an example of the status quo and how it would have been so easy just to walk away and say, I'll just stay at the same level and not progress on. I learned lots of things along the way, and I do talk about this with groups of women and groups of men, because I do worry when we talk about women in leadership, we talk about just women when actually we need to talk about men and women in leadership, because both groups want a different type of work experience. I learned very quickly that life doesn't go to plan. So you can't decide on day one, this is going to be my career, because jobs are changing and life is changing. I learned that I could learn just as much from terrible managers as I could from great managers. And we tend to forget that. Whereas actually from terrible managers, I learned the things that I didn't want to do as opposed to the things that I did want to do. Every now and again, I took lateral moves for great experience and to broaden out my portfolio. And I do think we are inclined to think about careers being vertical rather than occasionally winding. I also learned, and probably learned this too late, that sometimes in your life you have to prioritize life over work. And that's fine actually, because work now lasts for such a long time. You have to think about how you can blend both together. I do talk about syndromes with women. I like syndromes, but they do apply just as much to men, but there are 2 or 3 that are more predominantly for women. And the first I talk about is the idea of the princess syndrome. And our research and our work with the 30% Club and talking to groups of women showed that as a gender, we are more inclined to keep our head down and do a great job and hope that someday our greatness will be recognized and somebody will put a tiara on our head. But actually, we need to look up and talk more about our skills and talk about what we're good at, which links into my second syndrome, which everybody talks about in terms of imposter syndrome. We are less likely to give ourselves credit. We are less likely to take credit. We are less likely to talk about what we do because we're brought up to be modest I do talk about 2-year-olds and toddlers, and we teach our boys to be brave and we teach our girls to be good. And actually we need to teach both to be both. And I also learned actually that to be a leader at work, sometimes you have to be able to leave work behind and go home, because actually you can spend so much time worrying about things that further down the line really don't matter. You know, you go through a point where you say to yourself, I will survive. And I talk to women about the fact that they don't have to be super women to be a superwoman, but we try to be everything. We try to be mothers, we try to be great managers, we try to be great colleagues, and we compare ourselves against everybody and set a bar really high for ourselves, which I think can be a challenge, because if we set the bar too high, it's impossible for us to live up to it, but we have control over where the barrier is. I do think now is a really exciting time to be a woman leader, particularly a woman leader in business. And I actually think that business is an important part for leadership to start, because that's where the money is. That's where the decisions are made. And if we can bring more women into the business world, it is such a powerful influence. I got involved in the 30% Club when it started in Ireland in 2015. And we focus on gender, but we focus on all women, not just one type of woman. And when we started in 2015, only 12% of Irish boards were female. And now that's 23%. So much has happened in a short space of time, but we still have so far to go. Women, as I see it, still tend to go into traditional functions like HR and marketing and legal. They're not always the jobs that feed the CEO spot. So we need to encourage women to move into new disciplines, particularly in the area of tech and STEM. We need to look at women in leadership in all walks of life. So yes, business is really important, but politics is really important, and media is very important. And we don't always make it easy for women to move into that space. And we all have a responsibility to make that happen. For me, it normally comes down to 3 things. It needs to start with education. How do we educate boys and girls in terms of a more equitable world? Maybe not a more equal world, but a more equitable world. How do we look at access to employment in a more joined up way? And access to employment includes skills training. It includes childcare, carers arrangements. It includes education beyond primary and secondary school, but it's about business and university and government all working together. And then I think the third thing is around visible targets, because what gets measured gets done. So I really do believe there should be targets in business, there should be targets in government, but the targets for me are not there about fixing the women. I get very frustrated when we talk about changing women to fit in. For me, it's more about changing society so everybody can be of their best. I believe that men want to be able to demonstrate more feminine traits. Women want to be able to demonstrate masculine traits without being berated for it. Men and women equally want to have access to balance in their life. They want to have access to look after their children and make different decisions. And I also think the skills of the future, and the future, I mean next year and the year after, not 20 years down the line, are very different to what they were. And if we don't think about things in a slightly different way, we're not going to be able to take advantage of those opportunities. That's my time up.
Sure, I completely agree with that. Well, I was just trying to remember the numbers you told me, 65%, 54%. So, well, I definitely agree with, what I can take from your speech or from what you spoke as 3 main points, that one has to become a role model and inspire people. Nobody is born as a role model. You need to become a role model. You need to make yourself, you need to set yourself measures, set targets like you have said, and then inspire people to grow together, and also prioritize life over work. Because for me personally, my mom has become my role model. She's been like equally treating the work as the same. She has raised up 2 kids, and my dad used to live abroad, and it's so We were down with financially, emotionally, and physically, but then she stood strong. She rose us up like this, and we are here settled in all possible ways. And she's still working right now, and she's still happy that we both of her sons are settled in a proper way. And quite like it said, education access and visible targets should be set for each and every woman in Ireland, and also not just in Ireland, everywhere apart. So, and because it's completely again to the mindset, because I come from India, and India still people think that girls wearing short dresses are like criminals. People look at them so sexually that to look at that girl is wearing a short dress, so we got to go talk to her or take her or rape her maybe. So there are so many rape crimes. Jeevantika, correct me if I'm going wrong, but that's what I can see it in the news. There's so many crimes around sticking to women, but it's actually the society that has to change, the thinking that has to change, and the mindset that has to change, that how to see women as an equal gender. And thank you so much, Gillian, for that. That was wonderful. So we'll get back to any questions late in the later stage. Now, I would like to welcome Emma de Souza, who is a highly motivated and passionate advocate for human rights and equality with strong working relationship in Westminster European Parliament and US Congress as well within the press and media outlets. She started, led, and managed the We Are Irish 2 campaign, which was successful in bringing forward legislative changes to domestic UK immigration law. She works within civic society across the UK and Ireland and has experience in policy, legislation, litigation, campaigning, communications, public speaking, and academic writing. Her areas of expertise are immigration, human rights, with a deep understanding of the Human Rights Act and ECHR, social justice, and Brexit. Emma, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction, and to Gillian and Jeevantika for those amazing contributions. They're hard to follow. I am here this evening in my capacity at the National Women's Council of Ireland, and I am the leadership coordinator at the National Women's Council of Ireland, which is a national leading representative organisation for women in Ireland with over 180 group members and growing individual membership. We are a feminist organisation seeking full equality between women and men, and we believe that women in leadership positions at all levels of society offer key sources of leadership and skills in relation to achieving equality between women and men. Over the past year in particular, we have been supporting women in the workplace in a variety of ways. NWCI led and supported 2 important campaigns to support women's rights and well-being during COVID-19. The Extend Maternity Leave campaign and the No Discrimination campaign that resulted in the government changing its discriminatory policy of excluding women returning from maternity leave from the temporary wage subsidy scheme. We have also announced the establishment of a free employment law advice clinic for women in partnership with community law and mediation. The clinic's mission is centered on ensuring that every woman has the right to economic fairness, equal opportunity, and dignity in the workplace. The issues that we can assist with in that capacity is unequal pay, harassment, including sexual harassment, pregnancy and maternity discrimination, health and safety issues, and general employment law matters. Over 50% of women over the age of 15 are currently in the labour force, and women make up 46% of all those in employment. And yet significant barriers to women in the workplace, and in particular in leadership, persist. We have a gender segregated labour market with female dominated industries attracting lower wages. A recent survey showed 71% of female professionals feel there are barriers to promotion in the workplace, with gender discrimination being the main one. The gender pay gap currently stands at 14% in Ireland and has serious implications for a woman's lifetime earnings, her life and career decisions, and her ability to live in older years with a decent income. Some of the barriers we are very familiar with and have already been spoken about here this evening. They aren't new, but rather persistent societal and institutional barriers that for a long time, many people have been trying to break down. Some of those barriers are, of course, a lack of quality, affordable childcare facilities. Care remains a significant barrier, with 98% of all unpaid care work undertaken by women. Women often have to face the choice between a promotion or their caring responsibilities due to a lack of flexibility in the workplace. Unconscious gender bias and discrimination, and of course the gender pay gap, are all significant barriers. For young women in particular in leadership, confidence is a significant barrier. And that comes from how difficult it can be as a young woman in leadership, having to have the confidence to put your voice forward. That's especially difficult in environments where there are very few women in the workplace. So how do we address these barriers? Progress in this area is slow. We have seen some improvement in female participation on boards and leadership teams, especially for ISEQ 20 companies, where the average representation on boards is up from 18% in 2018 to 27% now. But this is a far cry from adequate representation and gender equality, and we still have all male company boards and workplaces in Ireland. Unconscious gender bias is difficult to identify and prevent, but there are some useful tools such as blind evaluations, structured recruitment and performance evaluation, and transparency. We need regulation in order to deal with precarious and casual work and protect women in those low-paid labor force jobs. Closing the gender pay gap, promotion of women leaders, and wage transparency are all essential to counter some of these barriers. Enhancing the entitlement to flexible working arrangements. What I have to say is, living through the past year of all of us adjusting to living in these virtual spaces and working from home has taught us that flexible working is possible, with a lot of companies in Ireland having to very quickly adjust to a work from home policy. Often in promotion and leadership positions and board positions, a lack of flexible working arrangements is a barrier to women in these roles. And going forward in a post-COVID environment, these are areas that can be addressed and should be worked on. Specific and targeted measures to increase the number of women in positions of senior leadership in public and private sectors is needed. And reevaluating job specifications for senior management. For example, if a woman has left the workplace for care responsibilities and then returns to the workplace, this gap in their employment can often prove a hindrance to them ever achieving a CEO position. A work-life balance has to become a priority, and I have hope that post-COVID that will be something we can all have. And making mentors available to everyone is essential in the workplace. Harassment and discrimination need to be identified early and addressed. At NWCI, leadership is one of our core foundations, and this year we will be prioritizing women on boards, trying to get quotas to have women on boards. We will also be prioritizing young women in leadership. And we will be working on a COVID-19 recovery plan so that we can try to break down some of those barriers, such as flexible working arrangements, affordable childcare, care responsibilities, and visibility of women in the workplace. That's me, short and sweet.
Thank you very much, Emma, for that. That's completely inspiring what you guys do and what you guys transform young women into leaders, because young people are always tomorrow's leader. So that's definitely inspiring, and I really appreciate the work you're doing for society and also for the women. And also confidence is definitely a significant barrier, because a lot of young girls, they don't tend to speak out because of the family pressures or because what society might think. Again, it comes to Gillian's point that society thinking is a major factor here. How we think plays a major role, and harassment actually should be addressed earlier, because there are a lot of cases which I've seen personally from in my locality back in India, and also in any part of the world that I've lived, that not many people tend to raise their voice out against the harassment that's happening, and that's very sad and terrible, and that's pathetic for the families themselves, that they are trying, just because they're a poor family, they don't get to speak their voice out, and the rich families, they just do all kinds of stuff like that. So it's definitely so annoying and disappointing. And thank you very much for that. That was a
Thank
lovely.
you.
So now, guys, the floor is yours. So please use the floor. You guys talk to each other, share your thoughts again. If anyone has questions among yourselves, please. You have 5 minutes of the time for yourselves. So please share the thoughts and questions.
Yay! We got a 5 minutes. Maybe I'll ask a question to Emma. So I heard like she has a lot of foundations going on, and you are doing a lot of things with empowering women and getting women leaders on board. So may I ask, like, how are you planning to do that, and what is your approach in bringing those women leaders on board and encouraging more of our young females to get involved in all those things?
Well, as a organization, we have many different campaigns and strategies in place. You know, we're planning out 2021 just as 1 year to determine how we're going to try and break down some of these barriers. One particular area that we're going to be focusing on this year is women on boards and trying to achieve a legislative quota, because we have seen that voluntary practice is not really working. We actually had here recently in Ireland the first election with the legislative quota for 30% for candidates running. And we saw that all the parties scraped past that 30%, you know, it was like 30.5% or so for each party. So they saw this really as, you know, their high bar where they had to get to 30%, instead of seeing that really as a low bar, a starting point where they had to have a minimum of 30%, but, you know, 50% would have been better. So we're trying to apply that also now to boards, and we're going to be focusing on that a lot this year. But we're also looking at how to support women leadership in community and in civic society, because often when we think about leadership, we're thinking a lot of the times about politics, or we're thinking maybe about board members. And I think that we need to sort of look at how we define leadership, especially women in leadership roles, because we have women in leadership in our communities, we have them in all the different areas, academia, and, you know, it's across the board. And we're trying to look at how we can expand on that and build on that. So we're dealing with a lot of politics in terms of developing local caucuses to support women groups. And then personally for me, something that I really want to try and work on is young women in leadership, and looking at how I can find a way to lead those women, understanding that they do have the abilities to step forward and to help build up their confidence. Another area I want to look at is young women in leadership with mental health, and also social media, because it can be very difficult when you're a young woman putting yourself forward into a leadership position, then having to navigate the world of social media and visibility in terms of public life, or visibility in the media as well. It's all very difficult to navigate because, of course, we're subject to a whole different raft of societal prejudices. So I think that that's something that I'd like to focus on. Hopefully I can achieve that in 2021. Thank you.
Really, like, all the best for that, and it's really resonating to what, you know, what more of the women out there would need. And getting back to Gillian's point regarding, you know, she has tried 3 times to be on that manager position, and I can totally resemble to that, because I am 26 years old now. I will be 26-year-old this February. So being a 25-year-old female and being a CTO in one of the company where there are like 20 years senior people than you, and having those people working under you is really difficult, I would say. I've never imagined that I had to go through a lot of criticism, a lot of, you know, people were always giving out to me, like, why like 25-year-old woman, she's leading us, we have 20 years of experience, and how can she, you know, tell us what to do and what to not. So I think a lot of people out there, a lot of women out there face the same situation, and I can totally resemble to Gillian's point there, and I totally can understand what you might have faced in there. So getting back to the point again, I think there is a need of role model, and we could start that by becoming ourselves the role model to people, because a lot of people would like to see somebody, because they will never get that courage in them to, become something and, try to do something. But if they see somebody of their own gender doing something that great and having the same capability, of course they'll be encouraged, because I get encouragement from a lot of female leaders out there. So I never make myself feel, oh, I know everything. I feel like a dumb woman sitting in front of other women, because I want to learn from them what they are doing. And that's how it works. And there is definitely a need of education in the society first, because what Vivek said, things like a woman is judged by how is she appeared in India. So if you're wearing a short dress, you will be named. Why are you wearing a short dress in the family? Don't post the pictures on internet. Don't post the pictures on Instagram. Why are you posting short dress pictures on Facebook? And that's the mentality that people need to actually change, rather than changing what a girl is wearing. If a man is going out with the sandals and people are saying nothing, they're like, oh my God, look, he's still looking hot. Oh my God, look, he has a good body. But why can't you say, if a girl is wearing a short and going, oh my God, she looks so pretty, rather than just saying, oh my God,
Yeah.
she might be a slut.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
why would you have to say that? So I think,
Well, you're right. It's the education, and it's breaking down those societal barriers that we're all ingrained into our lives. And I think there's actually an opportunity at the moment, because we are, living in these virtual spaces, where there's an opportunity to try and get that education out there. Because there could be a lot of people, going back again to young women, but there can be a lot of young women who maybe would be nervous or anxious about stepping into a room,
yeah,
especially by themselves at an event. They might be interested to learn or to discover what's happening, but they might be nervous about taking that step themselves and being present. Now that we
yeah,
do have this virtual space and this environment, people can choose to be as present as they want to be in an event, or they can also have more accessibility. We're seeing in a lot of events now that the numbers of participants are a lot higher than they have been sometimes at in-person events. I think that that's a great opportunity to increase education, and also hopefully build confidence then too, because if we have people like yourself, who are an incredible role model for young women, doing these kinds of events, they can see that, and then they can maybe, whenever we all are able to go back into in-person meetings, come forward themselves.
I think there's lots of opportunities that we need to make sure we don't let fall away from us, and particularly looking at some of the things that you've both raised. I think that the first thing is we have to change our perception of what a role model is. So the traditional idea of a role model is somebody who is a trailblazer, who has already been there, who has already made it, who is an amazing and incredible person that we would all just want to follow, when actually that puts pressure on people to feel that they can't be a role model themselves. So for me, there's a bit about, actually my role model can be somebody who looks like me, who's quite normal. My happiest day on my last day in my previous career, totally unlike my 3 unsuccessful attempts, which happened in the 80s, but this was 2 years ago. A young woman with children, she came to me on my last day and said, I'm really going to miss you. And I said, oh, well, I'm going to miss you too. I enjoy our conversations, but you don't need me anymore. You're more than well able to do the job. And she said, no, that's not why I'll miss you. I'll miss you because every time I look at you and I go home and look at my kids, I think I can be like that. And all she was looking at was a mom who had decided to have a career, nothing trailblazing. And I also think there's an opportunity at the moment. I do agree completely with some of the points Emma has raised in terms of the challenges of COVID, and we've seen it in particular sectors. But actually, COVID has given us lots of positives. And if we keep talking about the negatives, it'll become a self-fulfilling prophecy. We have to talk about some of the positives. And one of the positives that has come through is companies that have done more agile working as opposed to just remote working. And there's a big difference. Remote means you still do everything the same way, but just in your kitchen. I'm in my kitchen now. Agile means you've much more control. But the other thing that we've seen through COVID is a different definition of what leadership looks like in an agile world. And we're seeing very different skills coming forward, skills that women traditionally are better at. In terms of looking after their team, being more empathetic, thinking about wellness. learning how to trust the people who aren't sitting at a desk beside them every day. So we've really good opportunities, and the real benefit is spotting that opportunity and leveraging it rather than letting it go and losing another 3 or 4 years of progress.
No, I agree absolutely completely with you
Yeah.
there, Gillian, on that point. And there is really a opportunity here, because a lot of people for a long time said, no, it can't be done. And now we know it can be done. And I'm thinking about other women too, like disabled women, for example, who have struggled in leadership in the workplace. You know, that this opens up so many opportunities for groups that have been marginalized and that have struggled. And I think that that's something that has to be utilized.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, that's really good point that Gillian you raised out, and it really it's not necessary that knowingly you have to be a role model for somebody. So if a young kid, a young baby girl looks at a Superman and she wants to be a Superman but not a Superwoman, and that's how it is based on your skills, based on your likings. I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be a pilot before, but it does not turn like things are not planned, honestly. What you wanted to be back 20 years back and now what you are, it's totally different. And I think it's the best things that are happening. Like it would have been amazing that if I would have been a pilot now, but what I am doing now and what I'm capable of now, it's because that thing did not happen. So I think sometimes it's really up to the time and patience that you need to have, and role model just not being, that if somebody likes Superwoman, I need to be Superwoman. It's something that you are natural, and people are admiring that quality of yours. So
so many jobs are going to look so different.
Yeah.
In 5 years' time, in 10 years' time. Probably the best conference I ever went to talking about competencies. There was one company there that had the most incredible competency model. You know, they had 9 competencies with 9 sub-competencies and hundreds of behaviors. And I thought that must be so confusing for their employees. And there was another company that said, there are 2 competencies you need in our company to succeed. You need to know how things get done around here. You need to be able to cope with change, and anything after that will come. And I thought it was genius, because how many of the jobs that we look at as children still exist? Or how many parents today could understand if a child said, I want to be a business analyst or a data analyst? They just don't know, because it could be something different again in 2 or 3 years' time. So it's about the ability to think about how we do things and to cope with change and move on.
True. Adding to Jeevantika's point, I would like to mention that, everything that happens in life has a purpose behind it. A lot of people tend to become devastated that, things are not going as a plan, and probably they end up in a suicidal tendency. But not everything is like that. God has a different plan for everyone in life.
Yes.
So we have questions popping up from the audience. So we have one question for Gillian. Gillian, is there any particular leader that you always look up to?
Oh gosh. There's probably lots of very famous people where I love their books and I love their writing. I'm a big fan of Rosbeth Mott's Cantor. I'm a big fan of the Southwest Airlines story. But actually, the biggest leader I still look up to is my very first manager. Where he was running a really busy project, and I arrived as a 17-year-old kid who knew nothing, but I was the resource he was given that day. And he just let me do things, and he trusted me, and he had faith in me, but faith to realize that I was learning and that there would be days I would get things wrong, and then he would help me get it right. And through all my working life, I still remember him. And I still remember how he made me feel when I got things right, and how he never made me feel terrible when I was learning and things didn't go so well. So yes, there's lots of famous people. I'm a bit like you. My mother worked when I was young, so I had I had the role model of the idea of a mum that went out to work, and she worked and ran our house and was an equal partner with my dad. So yeah, it's the ordinary people that you remember the most.
True, definitely.
True.
Definitely, the family is the most leaders that we always look up to. And there's another question for Jeevantika. Jeevantika, what can we do to support women leadership today?
Can you read that again? I saw you.
What can we do to support women leadership today in the present world?
To support leadership. So
Yeah.
I think if you are a male asking the question, then I would say supporting women, it's not just a job that you have to do. It's something that should come from within. And there are different ways. Like, I cannot advise how to support a woman and just give you, one pointers or 2 pointers. But it depends what kind of women are you around with. Some women would have problem with their social entities. Some women might have problem with facing problems in the workplace. Some women might have problem with booming up with the new technology. So it depends what kind of support they are needing, and I would say just listen. That's the biggest I think support that you can give to anybody. It's not just women, but anybody who's seeking seeking a solution. You just have to listen to what they're talking to, and you just have to listen what sort of support they are needing. And you just have to think before advising to anybody that what are you talking about and what are you advising them. So it should not just lead them to nowhere, because a lot of time it happened with me that, as Gillian said, that I had a mentor. My manager is my role model. My mom is my role model, of course, but my manager, he's actually my role model because he supported me as a CTO. He supported me so much in my career path. So he just listened to me, and whatever I said, even though if I was going in the wrong direction, he just listened to me and then advised me. Because if he would have not listened to me properly, and I would have said, just gibber jabber in front of him, and he's like, oh, Jeevantika, okay, just go ahead and do that. And I would have not been here right now. So I think the main focus of supporting anybody would be just listening to the problem carefully, and then looking around and advising to what sort of things they could do to achieve their goal. That's something I would really ask people to do. It's to listen.
So I completely agree with that. And there's another question for Emma. Emma, what is some of the advice that you share with young women entering a male-dominated profession?
Some of the advice.
Yeah.
Remember that anything they can do, you can do better. No, I'm joking. The advice I would give to young women entering into a male-dominated workplace is to try to have confidence in yourself and why you're there. That you have to believe in yourself first and put forward that in your workplace. If you're in work, you're there for a reason, and you shouldn't doubt your own skills and your own capabilities. So for me, I think it really comes down to self-confidence. And we're talking a lot about role models, so it's also about trying to find that as well and see yourself also as a role model, and what you can do in that workplace to try to usher in change. Because often those of us that end up in leadership positions don't intend to end up in leadership positions. We actually sort of end up finding ourselves there. And I think it's important that you believe that you can do that too.
True. And there's another question for Gillian. So Gillian, since the time you have started your career, how do you think the role of women has evolved in the business environment, and also finance being one of the male dominant sectors in business? How do you think the diversity programs can be more initiated and the women can be of more of leadership?
I think financial services took a while to change. As I said, when I started 40 years ago, the idea was women would leave once they got married. And probably for about the first 20 years of my career, I don't think anything really changed. The numbers crept up a little bit, but it was still small. But I do think in the last 10 years, financial services has started to leapfrog for two reasons. Firstly, financial services is growing into so many different types of roles and different types of competencies, it is needed too in terms of talent, you know, because diverse talent improves the bottom line. So for financial services to grow and, well, to survive at certain points and now to grow and thrive again, it does need to be able to tap into very diverse talent. I think the other thing as well is that financial services are realizing the role that they have in not just changing their own organization, but changing the wider economy through investment funds, through performance of boards, through performance of other groups. And financial services has stepped up in that space. I think diversity programs were really important because when you have a very, very strong culture that focuses around what I talk about, around in groups and out groups, you actually have to have some kind of structured activity, first of all, to raise awareness, and then to change the pipeline. Because unless you are actually talking about it in a male-dominated community, things aren't going to change. And then financial services, like every other business, you actually have to have a plan, you have to have targets, you have to have key performance indicators, and that's where a good diversity plan comes in. But for me, it's about three things. You have to start with diversity, so you have to bring in very different talent. You then have to work on inclusion, because there's no point having diverse talent if voices can't be heard. And then you really have to focus on changing the balance in roles of influence, because again, there is no point having a very diverse community, everybody with a voice to speak, but nobody in a role that can actually make a difference or can change the conversation. And that's where we're seeing so many of financial services. It's the one area where Emma and I might have slightly different views, but both look at the same outcome. Definitely across financial services in Ireland, we see our working group very supportive of targets, because targets mean you have to do it yourself. Whereas quotas mean somebody forces you to do it and you just tick a box and you don't think about the long-term consequences. Whereas we see financial services in Ireland realizing that they have to step up and do it themselves. And that's what we're seeing in the 30% Club.
Nice. So another question for Jeevantika. What was the best piece of career advice you have ever received, Jeevantika?
Okay. Well, there were a lot of advice people actually gave me, and um, really, I've never given a thought about the best advice somebody, but I think for me, the best advice that I've ever had from somebody, and it was really used, and I'm really using it now, is just to be bold enough to keep your words in front. I mean, there will be people who will be dominating you a lot at your workplace. It's not just the male, but a lot of women would be also dominating at the workplace, since they have been having a lot of experience than you have. So this was something, like, literally I'm saying this because I have memorized the way he or she advised me on this. So it's like, just be bold enough to put and just fight for the right thing. And if you just keep your voice lower, people will just bring you down, because there are very less people who will take your hand and encourage you to climb the stairs, but there will be a lot of people who will be pulling your legs out to stay behind. So yeah, like, this thing I always share with all the women community, and anybody who's seeking an advice from me, just be yourself, and don't be shy to share your knowledge that you have, because when you share your knowledge, it actually gets bigger. So if you keep things to yourself, it will be just narrowed to few things, and you won't be able to learn from others as well, and people won't be able to learn from you. So if you really want to make an impact in the society, make sure that you speak out, make sure you're bold enough, and make sure you have that confidence in you. Just build that confidence with time. It's not that everybody's born with confidence. People are shy in the very beginning, and I was the biggest bomb in my whole house, and I was the kind of a tornado. My dad used to call me as a tornado. So I think that's why I keep advising people that be the tornado, be the storm, and just be the good storm, not something that is bringing devastation out, but just be yourself, and everything will be fine with time. And be patient, wait for the right time. Don't rush into things.
Right. Thank you very much for that, Jeevantika. So it's already 8:11. So I'm so sorry for keeping you guys wait. So we just have this last question for Emma. So Emma, what are some of the good characteristics a good leader can have, or can potentially, influence other people?
For me, an essential characteristic is empathy. And it is something that, as women, is a strong skill for many of us. And I think that empathy and understanding and determination and listening are essential proponents to leadership, because you need to listen first to be able to respond. And also having back to that confidence too. So for me, it's really about having determination, empathy, confidence, and being able to listen to those around you.
Right. Completely agree with that. So that's it, guys. So that's a wrap up. Thank you very much for the insightful discussion and an inspiring one. Each and every story has definitely inspired me personally today, and I'll share the best to my friends and to my and I promise that I'm going to respect women, and I'm going to strive and build together and grow together. So I hope to see you guys on the future panels as well. And also, thank you very much to each and everyone who attended this session. Please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe our channels. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you so much.
Take
Take care,
care.
Jill.